And David Brinkley, NBC News, Washington. The Senate took its first vote in its debate on confirming or not confirming Abe Fortas to be Chief Justice. Fortas lost. The vote was on cloture, on stopping the filibuster, on forcing the members to stop talking, to sit down, and to decide whether to confirm Fortas or not. A vote like that takes a two-thirds majority, and they were well short of getting it. The Senate had agreed in advance to vote today at 1 o'clock, and everyone was pretty sure there would not be enough votes to force a cloture, but nobody could be certain until they were counted. One reason for the doubt was that Senator Dirksen said last week he would not vote to end the filibuster, one reason being that Fortas joined in a court decision Dirksen disliked, a decision turning loose a convicted murderer in Chicago, and Dirksen said it threatened to turn loose several more. Senator Javits of New York said those who didn't like the court's decision should vote against Fortas for that reason, but should not filibuster to prevent a vote. So they took a vote on ending the filibuster, and the Senate clerk announced the result, 45 to 43. That was 14 votes short of two-thirds of the senators present. The Democratic leader, Mike Mansfield, then said the appointment would be laid aside temporarily and the Senate would go to other business. He said he would announce in 2 or 3 days whether it would be taken up again. There seemed to be no chance whatever that the vote could be changed enough to end the filibuster, and so there seemed to be no chance that Fortas could be confirmed. The White House said later in the day there was no plan to withdraw the nomination, but it looked as if Fortas had lost.
The Huntley Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by
Geritol, America's #1 tonic. Geritol, the high-potency tonic that helps you feel stronger fast.
Have you ever asked yourself,
can iron-poor blood make me tired?
yes, especially if you're a woman, you may need Geritol. The great majority of tired people don't feel that way because of iron-poor blood, and Geritol won't help them, but it's a medical fact that many of the millions of people who have iron-poor blood are tired and need Geritol. It could be why you're tired. Just 2 Geritol tablets contain twice the iron in a pound of calf's liver, plus 7 vitamins. Geritol iron carries strength throughout your body. So for iron-poor, tired blood, take Geritol. Feel stronger fast. This is Ralph Bellamy. Your health.
Honey, it's 3 in the morning.
I can't sleep.
When simple tension keeps you awake, take Sominex as directed for 100% safe sleep.
Take Sominex tonight and sleep safe and restful. Sleep, sleep, sleep.
Take 2 Sominex tablets and sleep.
From the day he announced his candidacy, many supporters of Vice President Humphrey have urged him to break with President Johnson on Vietnam. Last night, the Vice President detailed his policy and pledged to end the bombing of North Vietnam, but he attached a condition. As a result, there has been some doubt and debate whether he indeed has taken a stand independent of the President. Some Humphrey supporters said he had. A North Vietnamese spokesman said it was nothing new. President Johnson had no comment. Well, here is what the Vice President said last night in his paid political broadcast, followed by reports from NBC News correspondents Ellie Abel, Jack Perkins, Sander Van Oker, and Douglas Kiker.
President, I would stop the bombing of the North as an acceptable risk for peace, because I believe it could lead to success in the negotiations and thereby shorten the war. This would be the best protection for our troops. In weighing that risk, and before taking action, I would place key importance on evidence, direct or indirect, by deed or word, of communist willingness to restore the demilitarized zone between North and South Vietnam. Now, if the government of North Vietnam were to show bad faith, I would reserve the right to resume the bombing. Now, secondly, I would take the risk that the South Vietnamese would meet the responsibilities they say they are now ready to assume in their own self-defense. I would move, in other words, towards de-Americanization of the war. I would not undertake a unilateral withdrawal. To withdraw would not only jeopardize the independence of South Vietnam and the safety of other Southeast Asian nations, it would make meaningless the sacrifices that we have already made. And I believe it would be an open invitation to more violence, more aggression, more instability. And it would, at this time of tension and danger in Europe, cast doubt on the integrity of our word under treaty and alliance. Peace would not be served by weakness or withdrawal. Nor would I escalate the level of violence in either the North or South Vietnam. What we must do is to seek to de-escalate the war.
The Vice President's "I would stop the bombing" speech sounded more like a break with the administration than it reads in cold type. In Paris, Le Duc Tho, a member of the North Vietnamese Politburo, found nothing new in it. It's still the same demand for reciprocity, he said, and Hanoi still rejects it. Nor did the White House see in the Humphrey speech anything that smacked of a repudiation. Talking privately, presidential aides said they and President Johnson were quite relaxed about the whole thing. The Vice President's own campaign staff worried that Democratic doves might dismiss the speech as something less than a declaration of total independence from President Johnson. Senator Fred Harris of Oklahoma and former Postmaster General Granowski called a news conference to say that their man Humphrey might even be willing to end the bombing without hard evidence of any comparable give on the communist side. That was not, however, what Humphrey said last night. On the contrary, like President Johnson himself, Humphrey linked the bombing halt to evidence, direct or indirect, by word or deed, as he put it, that the communists are ready to scale down the war. In short, Humphrey chose to accentuate the positive. He talked first about how he would stop the bombing and only then mentioned his conditions. President Johnson tends to start by saying he cannot end the bombing unless and until the same conditions are met. To professional diplomats, all of this sounds like a distinction without much of a difference. As one American official expressed it today, I would hardly call the speech a U-turn. Ellie Abel, NBC News, Washington.
Nixon still carefully avoids saying what he would do in Vietnam as president, but when asked about what Humphrey said he would do, Nixon at first delayed, said he wanted to read the full text, then came to a news conference this morning in Detroit, along with Governor Romney, and was asked about it again.
I'm not going to judge Mr. Humphrey's intentions. I have indicated that his statement, if he did not intend it to be a departure from his previous position of not pulling the rug out from on our negotiators, has been widely interpreted to the contrary, and that he should clear up that interpretation at the earliest possible moment, because if the negotiators from Hanoi are going to talk at all, our negotiators in Paris have to have the trump card of that bombing halt in their hands, and Mr. Humphrey must put it back in their hands in the event that they think he's taken it away. I notice, for example, that Mr. Humphrey indicates that he is willing to take the risk of calling for a halt in the bombing. I would respectfully submit that the risk is not his. The risk that is taken is to the thousands of Americans in the DMZ zone whose lives would be threatened in the event that a bombing halt occurred and the North Vietnamese forces were able to attack them in greater numbers than presently is the case. I think that it is possible, very possible, that the men in Hanoi could interpret this particular statement as offering them a concession in January that they could not get now. It is possible. I do not charge it. And I think that he ought to clear up that possibility, which he can do with a very forthright statement, that all he was attempting to do in making his statement was simply to say that in January he would negotiate exactly on exactly the same basis that President Johnson is negotiating now, that there would have to be some sort of action, word or deed on the part of the Hanoi government before he would agree to a bombing halt.
As the Nixon people appraise this politically, they believe it is not going to help Hubert Humphrey. They believe the fact that he made this statement and this proposal is a measure of his desperation in this campaign. Jack Perkins, NBC News, with the Nixon campaign in Detroit.
Senator McGovern, practical question. In those states west of the Mississippi where I've been covering Senate races, I have found that the vice president is a real drag on chances of candidates like yourself, Frank Church in Idaho, Wayne Morris in Oregon. Do you think this will help you in any way?
Well, I think there's no question that the greatest political handicap Democrats have in 1968 is the unpopularity of the Johnson administration. To whatever extent Mr. Humphrey can continue to do what he did on Monday night, and that is putting some distance between himself and this unpopular national administration, he's not only going to help himself, but he will help those who are running on the Democratic ticket.
Are you suggesting it was more than just stopping the bombing that was important? It was a symbolic act of breaking with the administration that will help him and help yourself?
Well, of course, I hope he believes what he said last night, that this isn't just an effort to bolster his political position. Assuming that that's true, it is important politically that he demonstrate the qualities of an independent figure who is his own man. He's got to indicate to the American people that this is not simply an extension of the Johnson administration if they support Mr. Humphrey. They don't want 4 more years of this war. They don't want 4 more years of what's been going on in American agriculture and in our cities. And if Mr. Humphrey can emerge, as I think he did Monday night, as an independent figure with his own position on these issues, and not simply as an extension of Mr. Johnson, he'll do a lot better, and other Democrats running this year will do better.
It was a new, more self-confident Humphrey that campaigned here in Nashville today. In an interview with reporter Judd Collins at WSM-TV, Humphrey said when he made his Vietnam talk last night, he was speaking at last not as the vice president, but as his own man.
I haven't tried to equate my position with the administration or with the critics. I didn't even put up the vice presidential seal when I made my broadcast. I said that I was introduced as the candidate for the Democratic nomination for president, Hubert H. Humphrey, not as vice president, nor did I put up my seal. Now, I did that for a reason. I wanted it very clear that what I was saying was my position. Now, if this happens to agree with some parts of the administration policy, well and good. If it disagrees, that's the way it has to be. I mean, that's the way it is.
Talk about this issue. Nashville was the first stop on Humphrey's first Southern tour, and a big, enthusiastic crowd turned out to hear him. Humphrey came south to hit hard at George Wallace on Wallace's home ground, hoping that tactic will give the Humphrey campaign a lift in the process. But Vietnam was still on Humphrey's mind. He's pleased by the initial public reaction to his new position on the war, and he hopes it will reunite Democrats, restrain anti-war demonstrators, and put Richard Nixon on the spot.
Which candidate for president can most surely guide this nation down the pathways of peace? That's question number one. And last night, I spoke to this nation about the hard facts of war and peace. I gave you a plan for peace in Vietnam, and I gave you a plan for peace in the world, and I'd like to hear from the opposition what they have in mind.
Humphrey's campaign aides hope and believe this could be a turning point, that it could give the Humphrey campaign the lift it so badly needs. Douglas Kiker, NBC News, with the Humphrey campaign in Nashville.
Hey, come on, kids!
He says, let's get this show on the road, I'll kill him.
Let's get this show on the road!
Right, Hattie. A physical record, 22. How does she do it?
How do I do it?
I'll tell you how I do it. I cry a lot. Not really. I'm nearly 20 years older than some of these kids in our little theater group. But when I consider it's either this or an old rocking chair, not for this girl. Oh, I have my little aches and pains. Doc says it's arthritis. But just in case, I keep this handy Anacin. Anacin's my friend. It's wonderful. It relieves my pain so I don't feel so stiff for hours. Now, where did I hear Anacin tablets have more of the pain medicine doctors prescribe most for arthritis?
Watch TV, you learn something.
Remember, for arthritis, minor pain, and stiffness, Anacin gives you more freedom of movement without pain.
The Special Forces camp at Thong Duc, southwest of Da Nang, still is holding out against the North Vietnamese, but American officers conceded today that the enemy can take it any time they want, although they would pay a high price in men. Off the coast of North Vietnam, the battleship New Jersey continued on its battle station. Yesterday, the reactivated vessel, fitted out with an impressive array of electronic gear to speed firing and make it more accurate, joined the fleet for the first time and bombarded targets a mile north of the demilitarized zone. NBC News correspondent John Rich reports.
The USS New Jersey has moved well within range of communist shore-based artillery. One of her first targets was an artillery position whose guns have been pounding the U.S. Marines below the demilitarized zone. On one run, she swept in less than 4 miles from the coast. She fired at positions 15 miles inland. The range of the New Jersey's naval rifles is 23 miles, double that of the next heaviest ship in the Navy. The giant projectiles are 8 times as heavy as those of a cruiser. They weigh a ton each. Her armor-piercing shells can blast through 30 feet of reinforced concrete. That permits her to go after underground bunkers that nothing else can touch. The first day, the crew was naturally nervous about its marksmanship. After the mission, the aerial spotter who watched the rounds land came aboard to report. He directed a 6-gun salvo of the New Jersey on the anti-aircraft positions. All 6 rounds, he said, landed within a 75-yard square. Since her mission is shore bombardment, the New Jersey has only 1,600 crewmen aboard. That's only half her complement in previous wars. This means more elbow room for everyone, but a lot more work for each individual. The New Jersey is a powerful, stable gun platform, but the Navy knows she also makes a big target for enemy gunners. On her first day, there was no hostile fire from the shore. But the Navy is concerned and has taken measures to guard against possible surprise attack, perhaps by some sophisticated missile not yet used in the Vietnam War. With the monsoons now closing in over North Vietnam, the New Jersey has the advantage of being able to shoot in weather when bombers can't fly. A controversial recommissioning cost $21 million, but some Navy men feel she may save more than that by helping cut down on aircraft losses. At any rate, the Americans fighting along the demilitarized zone are delighted that she's arrived. John Rich, NBC News, aboard the battleship New Jersey.
Hi there. So what's he doing in my shop with his electric razor and Williams electric shave? Okay, so the electric shave does make your whiskers stand up. So it does lubricate your face and give you a close, comfortable shave. So, a shave that feels barber close with your electric razor? Sure enough. Look for the big L, first letter in.
The Huntley Brinkley Report continues, brought to you by Simmons, makers of Beauty Rest, the mattress that gives every part of your body a good night's sleep.
You're watching Harry Deloise, champion sleeper, on the uncovered coils of a Beauty Rest mattress. See how each coil works separately to support Harry's head. How each coil responds individually to his arm. Beauty Rest's individually pocketed coils respond separately to the weight and shape of each part of your body to give every part of your body a good night's sleep.
75,000 longshoremen struck today on the eastern Gulf coasts from Portland, Maine to Brownsville and worked only military cargoes. They're seeking higher wages. President Johnson has invoked the Taft-Hartley law, which provides for an 80-day cooling-off period, and the longshoremen are expected to return to work when ordered to do so by a federal court. Albert Shanker, president of the New York Teachers Union, said today that the possibility of a renewed strike of the school system cannot be ignored. Shanker's threat was made after an experimental school board refused to assign union teachers of whom it disapproved. It was this refusal which provoked the strike originally. David?
Patrick Cardinal O'Boyle, the Roman Catholic Bishop of Washington, says he will punish 39 priests for refusing to accept the Pope's statement on birth control. The penalties include banning them from preaching, teaching, and hearing confessions. The priests said they believe married couples in certain circumstances could decide in their own consciences that artificial contraception fosters the values and sacredness of marriage. The cardinal said nothing in the Pope's statement allowed any opinion like that he didn't want to punish the priests, but he had no choice. The House Un-American Activities Committee opened today a hearing on the riots in Chicago during the Democratic Convention, and it was rough and noisy from the beginning. Many anti-war demonstrators showed up in weird costumes. One of their leaders, Jerry Rubin, came covered in war paint and wearing a bandolier of live ammunition. They put him out until the ammunition was disposed of. No cameras were allowed inside the hearing room, but there was a lot of shouting and yelling and gavel banging. The committee says it wants to know if the Chicago protests were organized, and if so, by whom. Chet?
The Soviet Union and the Communist parties of 57 other countries agreed today in Budapest to put off the Communist Summit meeting scheduled for next month in Moscow. It's known that the conferees were badly split over the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. In Moscow, authoritative sources said today that the meeting between Russian and Czechoslovak officials, postponed several times, will be held at the end of this week. In Prague, the people endured the Russian occupation, and the Russians enjoyed the city. Here is a report from NBC News correspondent Irving R. Levine.
Russian soldiers are appearing again in the center of Prague, but as tourists with cameras rather than on tanks. Units are given half-day leave from encampments to which they were withdrawn from the capital about 3 weeks ago. The Soviet soldiers show no awareness of the fact that flowers at the main square statue of King Wenceslaus honor the Czech boy killed here by Russian guns as he was putting up a Czechoslovak flag. This army band concert in Prague typifies what the Czechoslovakian army has been reduced to by the Soviet invasion. But the army of almost 200,000 men remains intact and is in fighting condition. It must be taken into consideration by the Russians. Czechoslovakia soldiers must hide their feelings as Russian occupying troops go sightseeing. The Czechoslovak soldiers now patrolling city streets belong to an army that was considered the best among Russia's Warsaw Pact partners. Now Russia can no longer count on the loyalty of the Czechoslovak army. This leaves Russia with a gap in its Warsaw Pact lineup and with the constant threat that any Soviet repression could bring the Czechoslovak army into battle against the Russians. However, the Czechoslovak army does not have an heroic history. It has never fought. It capitulated in 1938 to the Germans, in 1948 to the Communists, and in 1968 to the Russians. For that very reason, some Czechoslovak soldiers are eager to fight now for national sovereignty. Irving R. Levine, NBC News, Prague.
Said an unhappy driver named Duff. A broken down car's not enough. For even worse luck, I seem to be stuck with the wrong cigarette. Are these rough?
Oh, try a Newport. You like Newport. Smoother, more refreshing to your taste.
Your cigarette's not up to par. That's easy to fix. Here you are. These Newports are great. Have one while you wait. I'll go see what's wrong with your car.
Oh, rich tobacco, menthol freshness brightens up your taste with every puff.
You, sir, are a genius, no doubt. Newport's worth shouting about. Smoother tasting by far. What was wrong with the car?
Your gas gauge was stuck. You ran out.
Oh, change to Newport. You like Newport. Smoother, more refreshing to your taste.
King size or 100s, Newport smooths and refreshes your taste.
Secretary of State Rusk conferred today privately with UN envoy Gunnar Jarring on the Middle East crisis. Tomorrow, Rusk delivers a major policy speech before the General Assembly. Federal Nigerian troops have moved out of Owerri and have taken 2 other towns in their march on Umuahia, the last major Biafran stronghold. The Vatican today called for discussions between Christians and atheists. It said the proposed dialogue is not intended to convert people, but would be an expression of brotherly love. 200 prisoners at the South Carolina Central Correctional Institution at Columbia today attacked guards, set fires, and smashed prison facilities during a 4-hour riot. At least 5 persons were injured. Communist China today celebrated its 19th anniversary with a big parade and speeches in Peking. Party Chairman Mao watched and listened but did not speak. Prices rose today on the New York Stock Exchange. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained more than 6.5 points, closing at a new high for the year. The value of an average share of common stock increased 11 cents. David?
The law says if a candidate for public office gets radio or television time on anything but news programs, all other candidates for the same office must have the same opportunity. But this rule is not always clear. In Panama City, Florida, a television performer, a sort of master of ceremonies on a morning variety show, is running for county tax collector. His opponent demanded equal time on the air. The Federal Communications Commission ruled today he was entitled to it, 22 hours of time. So the television MC has been fired and his opponent given 22 hours. Now he has a problem in deciding how to use it all. The first morning he came on with a rock and roll band, but the public reaction was so bad he had to take it off. But the FCC ruling is that he must have the time and can use it however he pleases, whether the audience likes it or not. Good night, Chet.
Good night, David, and good night for NBC News.
Meet the newest, lightest home light chainsaw, the amazing XL 101. Easy to start and easy to handle. This fast-cutting saw will zip through a 12-inch log in 8 seconds. Cuts a cord of firewood before you know it. This new chainsaw, with its compact 10.5-pound engine, lets you tackle any wood-cutting job. How's this for easy pruning the home light way? This is how you can clear up storm damage fast. This new Home Light XL is a saw for professionals, too. It'll fell trees up to 4 feet in diameter. For floating power you can balance on 3 fingers, see the Home Light XL 101 and other new models in the XL line. World's fastest-selling chainsaws.